but let's move on from the hotel to the electric vehicle space. Very interesting developments. The electric vehicle viability is now being questioned globally in the wake of the global power crisis. So, for example, in the state of California, electric vehicle owners have been asked to refrain from charging their cars to avert power outages. And this is the exact same state that was encouraging people to buy electric vehicles a year ago. Chetan Maini, who is the co-founder and vice chairman at Sun Mobility, and Vaibhav Pratap Singh, the program lead at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, joins us now to talk about that. Chetan, good morning. Vaibhav, morning to you as well. Chetan, I want to begin with you. You know, what's happening in California speaks about the challenges, on infrastructure, on power, that even developed countries are facing. What do you think the implications of this would be for the EV market in India?
So I think it's a little overblown. I think we put in context. India is looking at doing 8.5 million air conditioners this year. To put that in perspective, that would be equivalent to putting around 70 million scooters on our roads in a year, and we produce around 20 million all scooters, electric and gas. This year we may produce 1 million. So with a grid that's anyway has to cater to other things, the electric vehicle side, especially, which is driven a lot by 2- and 3-wheelers, is going to be a very, very insignificant amount on impact on the grid. Some of the global markets like California that have very high air conditioning requirements, all houses are air conditioned and 1% of households have cars, they need to balance the power. So I don't think it's talking about shutting it down. It's just saying, hey, listen, between 4 and 9, there's peak power demand on air conditioning. And instead of charging your vehicle between 4 and 9, charge it at night when there's surplus power. So we'll have to get smarter on the grid side, but I don't see this having any impact, in the short to medium term in India. And by 2030, as India is adding the kind of renewable energy of 500 plus gigawatts of energy, if every vehicle in India by 2030 was electric, highly unlikely, that's over 300 million of them, we would need probably less than half of that renewable energy to power the entire country. So it's just a matter of perspective of where we think about it. And while there are certain challenges at the last point of transformers and everything, which has to come through, don't get me wrong there. But overall, I don't think we would have a challenge because we have the time to build up the infrastructure while the electric vehicle industry also grows in the country.
Okay, that's for that particularly you're talking about the Indian market, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, got that. Let me get Vaibhav Pratap Singh as well into the discussion. Vaibhav, do you agree with Chetan that, EVs in general have a very low impact on the power grid? So even if the power crisis escalates globally, it may not really impact the viability of the business per se. Your views?
Yeah, I concur with Chetan on that. And thanks, Sonia, for asking me over here. If we take the specific example of California, what the Californian grid today is observing is an intense heat wave and the impact around ACs, because the demand has just shot up. And usually the demand used to look like somewhere around 26,000 megawatt at the peak. And today it stands at around 46,000 megawatts. And that entire capacity is around somewhere around 47, 48 thousand megawatts that they could produce at any point in time. So this is majorly a electricity crisis that the state is facing, similar in line that many other states globally have faced. And as Chetan pointed out, that the electricity EVs, even though the California leads in the numbers where there are more than 1 million EVs out there, if you just assume that only 10% of these EVs are being charged at any point in time, the impact on the grid would be very, very, very minuscule. So it's not the EVs that are leading to such catastrophic high increase in the demand. It's more of a climate change that's impacting the grid because you are moving into electrification of the grid at any point in time, and the cooling demands are just keep pumping up. So if you just look at the what were the guidance note, it also asked the AC users to keep their AC temperature slightly higher, and this really works. So I guess it's a combination of everything. And even if I can take the example of India, in India the EV demand, if we assume even the EV30 targets and every other targets, the peak demand could only be impacted by 300, 400 basis points only, as per different studies out there. So it's not a very huge jump in the terms of electricity demand.
Okay, I'm glad you brought about that EV 2030 target, right? Because Chetan, I wanted to get you in on this. Union Minister Nitin Gadkari had said that by 2030, the government intends to have EV sales accounting for 30% of private cars. But where are we right now? I mean, less than 4% of private cars are constituted by EVs. Now, there are two reasons why this mass adoption is being hindered, right? One, of course, is the charging infrastructure, which is not very easily accessible, and there are challenges there. And the other one is the high cost of EVs. On these 2 points, do you think that there are viable solutions, and do you think this target will be met by 2030? It looks ambitious as of now.
So, let's look at the different segments, right? In three-wheelers, we've already crossed 51% in the last couple of months of all electric. 31% of all three-wheelers sold in India are electric, right? In the two-wheelers, we're close to 4.5 to 5%, which is an 8x growth from last year, right? Buses, India is trying to target 50,000 electric buses, which again would constitute a large part. Cars have been, but they're also a smaller portion of the entire electric mobility side of it. The 2 points you talked about was cost and infrastructure, and I do think these are very important areas. And what we felt that at least in the two-wheeler and three-wheeler and the buses and truck area, when you separate the vehicles, the batteries from the vehicles, you can get the cost of electric vehicles to be cost neutral or cheaper. And by swapping the batteries, you can get the cost of energy to be at least 20% cheaper. So we do believe technologies like battery swapping would address those issues of high cost, range anxiety, long refilling time, and infrastructure. And they're going to be one of the many solutions. Along with infrastructure, a regular charging infrastructure that's coming out across the country. It's a chicken and egg thing, but it seems to me there is movement there. And, at this point, we do see them going together. And I do believe that 30% of by 2030 in several segments will be exceeded, and maybe in the cars, maybe borderline of achieving it.
Okay, Vaibhav, very quickly, battery swapping can address the issues of the high cost issues that are present in commercial EVs. What about passenger cars?
So I would say passenger cars, if we go by why EVs are making an inroads out there in the market, it's because they make commercial sense out there. So on an upfront basis, most of the EVs, if I talk about four-wheelers, they are almost 70-80% more expensive than the usual cars out there. And so it's a very niche story that borders around which sector segment or we are referring to. So if we refer to the passenger vehicles or four-wheelers out there, last year it was a sale of 18,000 vehicles roughly. And this year we can expect, even if we jump, so 1 lakh EVs out there. So it has to make commercial sense because EVs by nature are operational efficient. So they allow you to lower your operating costs. So instead of burning the petrol or diesel or whatever you are running your normal vehicle upon, you could just switch to an EV and your operating cost just shoots down. So it's these niches where the EVs really make sense, where you could just, let's say, it could be your home delivery of food. It could be a Swiggy guy who could be just hopping on a bike out there and just using it for delivering. And similarly, you could see some startups that are coming up out there for end consumer, I would say, taking consumers just like Uber and Ola are doing. So
sure.
This is where the EVs make sense, and the personal mobility will take time to evolve.
Okay, that seems to be the summary of it, right? EV personal mobility will definitely take time to evolve, especially with the ongoing power crisis globally. Perhaps that could affect a bit of demand across the board. But let's do one thing. Let's thank Vaibhav and Chetan for joining in. Slip into a quick break. Markets are doing very well, so we'll come back with